Before we dive into the darkest corners of the story, don't forget to hit subscribe, smash that like button, and comment below if you think you could survive the twisted game some criminals play. You'll want to stay with me, because what comes next is not for the faint of heart. The night air was thick and humid in Hernando County, Florida, the kind of night where every shadow felt alive, every rustle in the bushes a threat. Police radios crackled intermittently in the distance, but in the quiet suburban streets of Spring Hill, a horror was unfolding that would shake a small community to its core. At 7:42 p.m., a frantic 911 call pierced the calm. A teenager's mother was screaming, her voice raw, trembling with a terror that no parent should ever feel. Officers rushed to the scene, a modest single-story house with a white picket fence and a neatly trimmed lawn, now smeared with blood. In the living room, they found Isabella Scavelli, 17, lying motionless, a chilling contrast to the chaos around her. Her mother, partially injured but conscious, pointed shakily toward the shadowed driveway. Detective Maria Gonzalez, seasoned and methodical, took in the scene with a practiced eye. Something about the scene didn't fit the pattern of random violence. There was precision in the chaos, shots fired but deliberately, aimed. The weapon was nowhere to be seen. Whoever had done this wasn't a stranger, they were calculating. As paramedics rushed the mother to the hospital, Gonzalez's team began their investigation. Witnesses reported seeing a dark sedan speeding away, tires squealing against the wet asphalt. One neighbor mentioned a figure, tall, moving with purpose, disappearing into the night. Surveillance cameras offered grainy, almost ghostly images, hinting at the figure's identity, but nothing definitive. Digging into Isabella's life revealed a shocking context. Just one day before, she and her mother had filed a police report against the man named Leonard White, 37, accusing him of sexual assault. White was a well-known local, charismatic in public, but the investigation uncovered whispers of dark dealings behind closed doors. Gonzalez's instinct screamed this was no ordinary act of violence. This was retaliatory, calculated, personal. Within hours, detectives discovered an alarming pattern. Financial records linked White to Sheldon Robinson, his 22-year-old cousin, a man with a criminal history and a known volatile temper. Evidence suggested a transaction, money exchanged under the table, possibly the infamous $6,000 payoff that would later define the case. But at this point, it was still a theory, a chilling one. As investigators sifted through the wreckage, Gonzalez found a cryptic note partially hidden under the sofa cushions. Written hastily, almost like a warning, it read, "Do not trust anyone. The truth will cost you more than you know." The handwriting matched none of the residents, suggesting the killer had been inside the house before or had planned the visit meticulously. But the most shocking discovery came minutes later, tucked away in the garage. A locked toolbox, inconspicuous and seemingly innocuous, contained the remnants of spent shell casings and a single, unregistered firearm. It wasn't just evidence, it was a breadcrumb, a sinister signature, pointing straight to someone who wanted to send a message. Detectives exchanged tense glances. The case was spiraling into a labyrinth of betrayal, money, and vengeance. And just as when it seemed the pieces were slowly coming together, Gonzalez noticed something that made her stomach drop. A second set of footprints leading away from the scene, smaller, deliberate, almost taunting, as if someone wanted to make sure they were followed. And then came the call from the lab. The fingerprints on the weapon matched someone inside White's immediate circle, someone the investigators hadn't even considered yet. The puzzle pieces were clicking, but what they were about to uncover next would turn the case inside out. Because when they opened the back door to search the yard, they found something no one expected. A blood-stained backpack buried in the mulch. Inside were items that belonged to another victim who had vanished under mysterious circumstances a month earlier. Her disappearance thought to be unrelated. Now all connections pointed to the same predator, Leonard White. Detective Gonzalez felt a chill crawl up her spine as the crime scene team unearthed the blood-stained backpack. The items inside weren't just personal effects. They were a message, a warning. Among the contents was a notebook belonging to a teen who had vanished under mysterious circumstances a month earlier. Her disappearance thought to be unrelated. Now all connections pointed to the same predator, Leonard White. The investigation escalated with terrifying speed. Surveillance footage from nearby streets, once grainy and inconclusive, began to reveal more than anyone anticipated. The dark sedan from the night of the murder wasn't random.
It traced a deliberate path from White's property to a series of abandoned lots where Gonzalez's team discovered makeshift caches of cash, cell phones, and unregistered firearms. Someone had been cleaning up, covering tracks, but the meticulous planning only hinted at how deep the conspiracy went.
Gonzalez and her partner, Detective Eric Martinez, pored over interviews with neighbors, family members, and anyone tangentially connected to White. Friends described him as charming, level-headed, almost fatherly in demeanor. But those who had encountered his darker side spoke in hushed tones, controlling, dangerous, and quick to lash out when cornered. Every story painted a picture of a man who would go to unimaginable lengths to protect himself. Then came the first breakthrough. A confidential informant, a distant relative of Robinson, came forward with details that made the room fall silent. White had allegedly paid Sheldon Robinson $6,000 to carry out the murder, the informant revealed, and had meticulously orchestrated the timing to coincide with Isabella's police report. It wasn't just murder, it was retaliation, calculated, deliberate, and cold-blooded. But the deeper they dug, the more twisted the web became. Gonzalez discovered digital evidence, encrypted messages, and deleted texts showing White had attempted to bribe witnesses, falsify alibis, and plant misleading evidence. He wasn't acting alone. Shelton had accomplices, and investigators suspected a third individual had helped cover up the crime, someone with insider knowledge of the family's movements and habits. As the detectives followed the paper trail, a shocking truth emerged. Sheldon Robinson had disappeared. No one knew where he was, and his phone had been turned off. The man responsible for the murder for hire, the one who had pulled the trigger, was now a ghost. Gonzalez realized they were dealing not just with a violent act, but a manhunt. Every second mattered, because the longer Robinson remained at large, the higher the risk he would strike again, or vanish entirely, taking evidence with him. Then a subtle clue changed everything. Analysis of cell phone pings revealed Robinson had been in close proximity to White's house hours before the murder. The pattern suggested he had rehearsed the attack, waiting for the precise moment Isabella and her mother were most vulnerable. Gonzalez felt her stomach knot. This wasn't a spontaneous crime. It had been meticulously planned, rehearsed, and executed like clockwork. The most unnerving discovery came when the team found a hidden compartment in the sedan Robinson had abandoned days later. Inside were items pointing to another possible target, a list of names including Isabella's friends and classmates. The realization hit Gonzalez hard. White hadn't intended this to be a single attack. It was part of a broader, horrifying plan. And just when the tension reached a breaking point, a call came from the morgue. Toxicology reports on Isabella revealed a small dose of a sedative, administered before the attack, proving she had been lured into a trap, not just shot at random. The crime had layers, each more sinister than the last, and the detectives were only beginning to scratch the surface. As Gonzalez stared at the evidence spread across the table, a single thought consumed her. The danger was far from over. White and his network were clever, ruthless, and unpredictable, and the next shocking discovery would change everything about the case, revealing that betrayal was closer to home than anyone could imagine. The search for Sheldon Robinson had grown desperate. Gonzalez and her team scoured every street, alley, and abandoned lot in Hernando County. Days turned into nights, and each lead seemed to vanish just as it appeared promising. Then came an anonymous tip. Robinson had been spotted at an old warehouse near the outskirts of the county. With SWAT and backup on the way, Gonzalez knew this could be the break they needed, or a deadly trap. Inside the warehouse, the air was thick with dust and the stench of decay. Rusted metal groaned underfoot as officers moved cautiously through the shadows. Gonzalez's flashlight flickered across crates and abandoned equipment, revealing a scene frozen in time. And then, in a hidden corner, they found him, Sheldon Robinson, crouched, pale, hands shaking, and clutching a bag filled with cash and documents. The evidence he carried was damning.
a literal roadmap of the murder-for-hire plot orchestrated by Leonard White. But what shocked Gonzalez the most was the file labeled Future Targets, a list containing names of friends, neighbors, and even family members of Isabella Scavelli. The realization hit her hard. White hadn't just wanted revenge, he had been planning a string of murders, a campaign of terror to eliminate anyone who could testify or stand in his way. Meanwhile, federal agents had White in custody. Sitting across from him in an interrogation room, they laid out the evidence: the cash trail, the encrypted messages, the testimony from Robinson, and the hidden compartment in the abandoned sedan. White remained calm, almost unnervingly so, until Gonzalez placed a photograph of Isabella on the table. For the first time, a flicker of panic crossed his face.
Robinson's testimony was pivotal. He described how White had manipulated him, promised him money, and painted Isabella as a threat. He confessed in chilling detail: the timing, the preparation, the cover-up attempts. Each word revealed the full scale of White's malice. Gonzalez felt a cold fury, the same type that consumes every detective who confronts evil in human form. As the case moved to trial, the courtroom was tense. Families of the victims watched in silence as the prosecution meticulously laid out the sequence of crimes. White's defense tried to spin the story, but the evidence was overwhelming. The murder for hire, the sedative, the financial transactions, the hidden caches, and the list of potential victims. By the end of the trial, the jury had no doubt. White and Robinson were guilty. But the final twist came after the verdict. As investigators returned to White's property to secure remaining evidence, they uncovered a hidden safe behind a false wall in the garage. Inside were items belonging to two other missing teenagers, long thought to have vanished without connection to White. He had been systematically planning more attacks, hiding his crimes beneath a veneer of normalcy. Gonzalez stood in the garage, shaken, the weight of the case pressing down. She knew the full story had been revealed, justice had been served, yet the chilling truth lingered. White had almost succeeded in creating chaos and fear on a scale far beyond what anyone could have imagined. She stepped outside into the humid Florida night. The street was quiet now, deceptively peaceful, but the darkness still held secrets, and Gonzalez knew that in every quiet suburb, in every calm street, the line between safety and terror was thinner than anyone wanted to admit. They thought the killer was behind bars, but in the shadows, the echoes of his plans remained. A reminder that evil often lurks closer than we think, and that vigilance, courage, and persistence are the only defenses against the darkness. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe, because the world of true crime never sleeps, and neither should we.